He had sworn off blind dates after betrayals and heartbreak, but when she walked in, he realized some meetings aren't chance and everything he thought he knew about his heart was thrown into chaos. If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. The city skyline glimmered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Nathan Whitmore's penthouse, a cold expanse of glass and steel that mirrored his life. He stood by the edge of the balcony, coffee untouched in his hand, the city lights reflecting in his sharp gray eyes. The morning air was crisp, biting at his skin, yet it brought no warmth to his chest. He had mastered wealth, power, control, but mastery over his own heart remained elusive. Another blind date invitation sat unopened on his phone. He had ignored countless messages before, convinced human unpredictability was a liability, yet this one lingered, blinking insistently. Nathan inhaled deeply, his fingers tightening around the cup. Why even bother? He thought. Love is chaos. I don't do chaos. Yet even as he muttered the words aloud, there was a trace of hesitation, a whisper of longing buried under years of self-imposed isolation. Across the city, Evelyn Johnson's morning was chaos in motion. Her small apartment smelled faintly of burnt toast, mixed with the lingering aroma of her children's shampoo. She shepherded her two kids, Lila, 7, and Jamal, 4, through breakfast, lunchboxes clattering onto the counter as cereal spilled across the floor. She was exhausted, running on a fragile mix of hope and necessity, yet she moved with an energy that spoke of resilience. Mom, I can't find my shoes. Lila's voice cut through the kitchen like a bell, while Jamal tugged at Evelyn's sleeve with sticky fingers. Evelyn sighed, brushing her hands over her hair as she gathered the scattered shoes. In the chaos, her gaze flicked to her phone. A message from a friend, "Don't miss it, your last chance tonight." She paused, chest tightening. The words carried a mix of fear and hope. Could she really step into the unknown, trust that someone might see her for more than her tired eyes and weary smile? Evelyn's reflection in the apartment mirror was honest. Dark circles under her eyes told stories of sleepless nights. Her hair was pulled into a practical bun, but she had dressed carefully, choosing a blouse that hinted at elegance she rarely had the luxury to flaunt. She whispered to herself, "Maybe tonight, I'll finally be seen." The thought was fragile, almost laughable, but it was enough to make her step out into the cold, letting the city's energy propel her toward the hotel where fate waited. Meanwhile, Nathan was still staring out at the skyline, the morning sun bleeding into the steel and glass of the city. His assistant's message pinged, 7 p.m. The blind date. One last attempt. He scoffed, muttering under his breath. One last attempt at what? Being disappointed. Yet, even as he spoke the words, he found himself adjusting his tie, straightening his jacket, preparing for a meeting he dreaded yet could not ignore. The ritual was familiar, meticulous, controlled, but beneath it all was a quiet, almost unacknowledged curiosity. As the day wore on, both lives moved in parallel yet opposite rhythms. Evelyn navigated the honking streets, the smell of exhaust and hot asphalt clinging to her coat. She held Jamal's hand tightly, Lila bouncing beside her, her mind simultaneously on work deadlines, groceries, and the possibility of tonight. Every step toward the hotel was measured, cautious, a delicate balancing act between fear and hope. Nathan's day was a mirror of precision. Meetings, phone calls, and calculated decisions filled his hours. He watched the clock with a detached intensity, each minute inching him closer to a meeting he had told himself to dread. Yet, in quiet moments, when the city buzzed beneath him and the boardroom felt miles away, he allowed himself fleeting thoughts. Maybe this time it will be different. Maybe she'll surprise me. He shook the thought off, bitterly amused at his own vulnerability. Evenings arrived in their respective worlds, casting the city in a gold and indigo hue. Evelyn's children slept early, leaving her to dress and breathe for herself for the first time that day. She smoothed her blouse, checked her reflection once more, and whispered a shaky prayer, Let me be seen. Let him see me. At the same time, Nathan parked his sleek black car outside the hotel. He studied his reflection in the tinted glass, jaw tight, posture perfect. There was no warmth in his gaze, only a controlled, deliberate exterior. And yet, beneath that armor, an almost imperceptible flutter of anticipation began to grow. He told himself it was curiosity, but part of him hoped it might be something more. They arrived separately, unaware of each other. Evelyn took a deep breath at the hotel entrance, letting the warmth of the lobby envelop her. Nathan walked through the revolving doors on the opposite side, eyes scanning the room for a name, a face, a spark he didn't quite admit he longed to see. The city outside continued its chaotic rhythm, indifferent to the quiet, mounting tension inside the hotel lounge. Two lives, fractured in different ways, were about to collide. Neither knew the other existed yet, but the air between them was electric, heavy with possibility. And somewhere in the back of their minds, unspoken, was the question that would define the night. Could one meeting really change everything? Have you ever felt your life inch closer to something you didn't even know you were waiting for? The hotel lounge was alive with quiet sophistication, soft amber lights reflecting off polished marble floors, the hum of muted conversations, and the faint clink of glassware. Evelyn's heels clicked hesitantly across the floor, her fingers tightening around the strap of her small purse. Every step carried a mixture of nerves and hope. She scanned the room for a familiar face, a name on a reservation, anything that might give her confidence. Nathan sat at a corner table, pristine suit impeccable, posture rigid yet relaxed in appearance. His fingers drummed lightly against the table, betraying a tension he refused to acknowledge. He had been here countless times before, in situations like this, each ending in polite disappointment. But tonight, something was different, though he couldn't put a finger on it. There was a flicker of something in the pit of his chest, an unnameable anticipation he buried beneath years of caution. Their eyes met across the room before either fully realized it. Evelyn froze for a heartbeat, feeling the unexpected weight of his gaze, something piercing yet unreadable. Nathan's breath caught for a moment, the first genuine emotion to surface in years. It wasn't attraction, it was recognition, a quiet stirring that something in this moment might matter. Evelyn approached, hesitating slightly before speaking. "Hi, I'm Evelyn. I believe we're here for the same reservation." Her voice was soft but steady, carrying the kind of honesty Nathan hadn't heard in years. "Nathan," he replied, standing and extending a hand. His usual ease faltered slightly under the scrutiny of her steady eyes. There was a quiet confidence in her presence, a warmth that contrasted sharply with the cool elegance of the room. They sat, awkward at first, a polite distance between them. The initial conversation was superficial, small talk about the city, the weather, mutual acquaintances, but beneath it, a subtle undercurrent of curiosity and recognition flowed. Each measured word, each slight gesture carried weight. Nathan noticed the way her hand twitched slightly as she stirred her drink, a telltale sign of nerves. Evelyn noticed the careful control in his posture, the precision in his speech, and for the first time, wondered what lay beneath the exterior. The waiter left them alone, and silence settled, a heavy, expectant pause that neither of them tried to fill. Nathan studied her quietly, noting the slight fatigue under her eyes, the resilience etched into her posture. It wasn't just beauty he saw, it was a history, a story she hadn't told, and he felt a rare pull to understand it. "You seem tired," he said finally, cautiously. "Long day." The words were casual, but something in them was an olive branch, a bridge into vulnerability. Evelyn hesitated, then smiled faintly. "You could say that. My kids keep me on my toes. Sometimes I wonder if I ever get a moment for myself." Her voice was tinged with weariness but also a quiet pride, and Nathan felt the weight of responsibility she carried. For the first time, he didn't respond with charm or wit. He simply listened, leaning slightly forward, attentive. And Evelyn, sensing his genuine interest, allowed herself to relax ever so slightly, the armor around her heart easing in response. A subtle shift happened then, a recognition of shared humanity, a momentary crossing of worlds. Nathan's lips twitched into a faint smile, almost unnoticeable, but it didn't escape Evelyn. There was warmth there, a thread connecting two very different lives. As the conversation deepened, Nathan shared a rare fragment of himself, a story from his childhood, a failure at a company venture that had left him humiliated. He spoke without the usual polish, without the shield of perfection, and Evelyn listened with rapt attention. She laughed softly at his self-deprecating humor, and the sound sent a jolt through him, a reminder that laughter wasn't something he allowed himself often. Evelyn, in turn, shared a small story about her children, a moment of tenderness and chaos that revealed her heart without pretense. Nathan's reaction was subtle but profound, a furrowed brow, a softening gaze, a realization that connection wasn't transactional, it was raw, messy, and real. Then came the small, quiet revelation that changed everything. Nathan absent-mindedly commented on something in Evelyn's bracelet, a delicate charm he couldn't explain but felt compelled to notice. "That's unusual," he said, leaning slightly closer. She looked at it and smiled, tracing the charm with her finger. "It belonged to my grandmother. She always said it would bring the wearer luck, and maybe a little love, too." The statement hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Nathan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stared, caught between disbelief and a surge of something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. This wasn't chance, it was an echo, a subtle pull that defied logic. Time seemed to stretch, the restaurant fading into background noise. All that existed was the tentative bridge forming between two hearts. Every glance, every gesture, every tiny shared laugh was charged, carrying the weight of unspoken vulnerability. The moment was fragile but magnetic, impossible to ignore. And then the door opened again, letting in the evening chill, a reminder of the world outside. Reality intruded, but something had shifted irrevocably. Nathan leaned back, swallowing the first real vulnerability in years. Evelyn's fingers lingered over the bracelet, a quiet anchor to her courage. They left the lounge that night with a sense of suspended reality, like two worlds had touched briefly, reshaping something fundamental in each of them. Neither could articulate exactly what had changed, but both felt it, a spark of hope, a crack in the walls they'd built, and the silent knowledge that this meeting was no mere coincidence. Have you ever met someone who made you feel seen in a way no one else could, and left you questioning everything you thought about love? The next morning, the city hummed with its usual rhythm, indifferent to the storm that lingered quietly in two lives. Nathan sat in his penthouse, untouched coffee now cold on the marble countertop. He replayed last night in his mind, the soft curve of her smile, the quiet strength in her voice, the way she'd laughed at a story he had never dared to tell anyone. He hated that he couldn't stop thinking about her. Hate was too mild a word, though. It made him feel exposed, a sensation he had long since avoided. He had walls built high enough to keep out disappointment, loneliness, even love. And yet, Evelyn Johnson had breached them in less than 2 hours. Nathan rubbed his temples, trying to ground himself. It was just a blind date. Nothing more. You don't do more. Meanwhile, Evelyn was on the subway, balancing a briefcase in one hand and Jamal's small backpack in the other. The morning rush pressed against her, loud, chaotic, suffocating. She replayed the evening over and over, a slow smile tugging at her lips, and then a pang of doubt. Did he really mean it? She wondered. Or was it just polite conversation, charm for charm's sake? Her friends at work bombarded her with questions. So, how was it? Did he notice you? Their excitement made her hesitate. She had wanted to believe, wanted to feel the spark, but doubt crept in. She was tired of hoping, tired of being seen only as a fleeting curiosity. Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line as she muttered, "It was nice. Nice." A word so safe it barely touched the truth of her emotions. Nathan's day mirrored her uncertainty. Meetings dragged, the boardroom walls closing in. Every decision he made felt hollow, every conversation shallow. The memory of Evelyn's eyes, the way she had looked at him as if seeing past the carefully constructed exterior, refused to leave him. Yet he fought it. You don't do emotions. You don't let someone in. Not again. His heart, stubborn and rebellious, disagreed. Later that evening, both found themselves involuntarily scanning their phones, half expecting a message from the other. Nathan's screen remained blank, and Evelyn's too. Silence, unbroken, settled like a weight. The longer it lingered, the louder their insecurities grew. Nathan tried distraction. Calls with investors, spreadsheets, his usual routines, but every sharp sound of a notification made him flinch. His mind returned to her laugh, the tilt of her head, the authenticity that had disarmed him. He didn't want to feel so powerless, so human, but the pull was undeniable. Evelyn faced her own battle. She cleaned the apartment after her children's bath, the smell of soap and warm towels grounding her, yet her thoughts strayed again and again to him. She imagined him alone in his penthouse, stiff and controlled, and wondered if he felt the same spark she did. And just as quickly, doubt returned. I can't trust this. It was a moment. That's all it was. The day stretched, each of them oscillating between longing and resistance. Nathan's secretary called, noticing his distraction. Sir, are you okay? You've barely touched your schedule today. He forced a tight-lipped smile. Fine. Just thinking. But even he knew the truth was more complicated. He was thinking of Evelyn, and that thought both terrified and exhilarated him. Evelyn's friend, Mariah, stopped by her apartment after work. You should text him, Mariah urged. Tell him you had fun. Don't overthink it. Evelyn shook her head, brushing a stray curl behind her ear. And say what? Hi, nice to meet you. I exist. I don't want to make it awkward if he didn't feel the same. Mariah sighed. You can't let fear decide. Evelyn didn't reply, but her gaze lingered on the bracelet she wore, the one Nathan had noticed, and a small, quiet hope sparked within her chest. Both were trapped in a liminal space, desire and fear, curiosity and protection. The spark from the night before had lit something neither was prepared to fully embrace. The irony was sharp. Two people, so clearly drawn together, were simultaneously pushing each other away. Even when Nathan returned to the hotel lounge later that evening, on impulse, more for himself than anyone else, he found only the empty chairs, the echoes of laughter and soft conversations that no longer belonged to him. The room felt colder, more sterile than it had the night before. He ran a hand down his face, tasting frustration and longing, realizing that part of him wanted to retreat further, to bury the feeling before it could hurt him. Evelyn, at the same time, lingered near her apartment window, gazing at the city lights reflected in the glass. Her children slept, and for a rare moment, the apartment was still. She traced her fingers over the bracelet, thinking of Nathan. Was he really different or just kind that night? The uncertainty gnawed at her, a small pit of anxiety that left her heart both heavy and hopeful. That night, both lay in bed, staring at ceilings that promised nothing. Nathan's mind replayed her voice, her laugh, the way she had made him feel human. Evelyn's thoughts were equally consumed, cycling between hope and self-protection. Neither reached out. Pride, fear, and old habits, walls built long ago, kept them from acting on the connection they both craved. And yet, in their silence, the world had shifted. The spark was no longer just a fleeting moment. It had taken root, stubborn and insistent, demanding attention even when both tried to resist. Have you ever felt drawn to someone, yet found yourself pulling away out of fear, doubt, or past heartbreak? The rain fell in thick sheets that evening, painting the city streets in a slick sheen of reflections and neon lights. Evelyn clutched her umbrella as she hustled down the sidewalk, her two children trailing behind her, their little sneakers splashing through puddles. She had just finished an exhausting day at work and was racing to the after-school program to pick up Lila and Jamal, cursing herself for underestimating how quickly time could slip away. Nathan, meanwhile, was driving across the city after a last-minute meeting had dragged longer than expected. He had intended to retreat to his penthouse, but a relentless itch of curiosity pulled him in another direction. He had been replaying last night's moments in his mind for hours, the way Evelyn's laugh had caught him off guard, the gentle firmness in her voice when she spoke about her life. The memory was both unsettling and magnetic, forcing him into the wet night air. Fate, or coincidence, decided for them. A minor traffic accident, a fender bender at an intersection slick with rain, left both Nathan and Evelyn stranded. Evelyn's small sedan was at a standstill. Nathan's black luxury car halted just feet away. Both cursed under their breath as they stepped out into the rain, the air heavy with damp cold. Evelyn's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the man stepping out of the sleek car. Nathan froze for a moment too, taking in the sight of her, drenched but still composed, her hair clinging to her forehead, eyes alert and determined. Neither expected this. Serendipity had thrown them together in the most inconvenient of circumstances. "Are you okay?" Nathan called across the water-slick street, his voice carrying a mixture of concern and disbelief. Evelyn nodded, fumbling to secure her umbrella while holding her children close. "I'm fine, she replied cautiously, the words tinged with curiosity and a trace of guarded amusement. The rain intensified, leaving no choice but to share the narrow cover of a nearby cafe awning. Their bodies were close, but the moment was awkward, charged, and loaded with unspoken tension. Neither could retreat without acknowledging the other, and yet neither wanted to reveal how much their brief connection the night before had unsettled them. A silence settled between them, punctuated only by the patter of rain. Evelyn glanced at Nathan, noticing the lines of tension around his mouth, the sharpness of his jaw softened by the vulnerability in his eyes. For a moment, she saw not the millionaire CEO, the man of wealth and reputation, but the human being beneath, flawed, cautious, and painfully alone. Nathan, in turn, studied her in this new context, stripped of the elegance of the hotel lounge, her resilience now framed by exhaustion and determination. There was a rawness here he hadn't seen, a depth that drew him in and terrified him in equal measure. He realized then that the spark between them wasn't fragile, it was real, stubborn, and demanding attention. The rain continued to pour, soaking through their clothing despite the umbrella's meager protection. Evelyn's children huddled close, and Nathan instinctively adjusted his coat, offering it as an extra layer for warmth. She hesitated, then allowed him, brushing past the discomfort of pride and self-protection. The gesture was small, almost imperceptible, but it marked the first crack in their defenses since the spark had ignited. Forced into proximity, words began to flow, awkward at first, but gradually more natural. Nathan asked about her kids, and Evelyn answered, telling little stories that revealed humor, warmth, and love despite her fatigue. Nathan listened, genuinely, no facade, no calculated charm, just presence. For the first time, Evelyn allowed herself to feel seen, fully and without reservation, and it was intoxicating. They lingered under the awning, rain washing over them, unaware of the hours passing. Small details, a shared laugh over Jamal's insistence on wearing mismatched socks, Nathan's hand briefly brushing hers as he handed her a spare umbrella, became anchors in a stormy world. Both felt the tension between familiarity and fear, desire and caution, but neither could step back. The proximity demanded attention, demanded honesty, even when they weren't ready for it. And then the storm passed, leaving the streets glistening in the aftermath of rain. They stepped into the night together, the forced closeness having softened some of the walls they had so carefully constructed. Nathan drove them to a nearby diner, an unspoken agreement forming to continue the conversation, to bridge the space between past pain and present possibility. Evelyn glanced at him, a small, tentative smile tugging at her lips. I didn't expect to see you here," she admitted softly, the words carrying more meaning than she intended. "Neither did I," Nathan replied, voice low, sincere. "But maybe some things aren't meant to be avoided." His gaze met hers, and in that instant, a fragile understanding passed between them, an acknowledgement that the spark they shared could no longer be ignored. For the first time, Both began to understand that resistance could only last so long. Circumstance had forced them together, yes, but it also offered an unspoken invitation to risk, to lean into the connection that had been growing since their first meeting, to explore what might be possible if they allowed themselves to trust. Have you ever been forced into a situation that made you confront feelings you were trying to ignore? The diner was quiet now, late into the evening. Only the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional clatter of dishes punctuated the space. Nathan and Evelyn sat across from each other in a booth, remnants of their shared meal untouched. For the first time since their encounter, the evening's conversation had shifted from small talk to something heavier, an unspoken invitation to reveal the truths they carried. Evelyn twirled her fork nervously, glancing down at the patterned tablecloth. "You know," she began, her voice soft, "people usually don't get to see this side of me, the one outside of work or the kids." Nathan leaned forward slightly, attentive, encouraging her without needing to say a word. She sighed, a small release of tension. "I lost my parents when I was 16. My grandmother raised me, and when she passed, I promised myself I'd keep going, no matter how hard it got. That's why I work so much, why I do everything on my own. I've learned not to depend on anyone, or maybe I've just been afraid to." Nathan's expression softened. He could see the layers of pain and resilience etched into her eyes. There was no need to fill the silence immediately, just listening was enough. But when he spoke, it was deliberate, thoughtful. I understand that. I've been conditioned to hide too, to control everything because the one person I trusted most left me broken once." Evelyn's brow furrowed slightly, curiosity piqued. "What happened?" she asked, gentle but probing. Nathan hesitated, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. It was not easy for him to revisit the wounds he had buried so deeply. "My first serious relationship. I gave everything, and it was taken for granted. Public humiliation, betrayal, a mix of lies and truths I couldn't untangle. I built walls after that, not just around my heart, but around my life. Trust became a liability," he admitted, voice low, almost vulnerable in its restraint. Evelyn studied him, the first flicker of empathy mixing with the attraction she had felt since the night before. She realized that the man sitting across from her, polished and seemingly untouchable, had scars as deep as her own. And yet, there was a difference. Where she had hardened into self-reliance, he had hardened into control. Both were armor, but of very different shapes. The conversation lingered in a delicate space, neither pushing too far but neither retreating. Nathan noticed Evelyn's bracelet again. The charm she had mentioned belonged to her grandmother, a symbol of resilience and inherited hope. Without speaking, he reached forward and lightly brushed his fingers against it. The gesture was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it conveyed more than words ever could: recognition, care, and a silent connection to the vulnerabilities she had shared. Evelyn looked up, meeting his gaze, and for a moment, the diner, the city, the rain-soaked streets outside, all of it faded away. She saw not a millionaire, not a stranger, but a man capable of understanding depth, capable of seeing the hidden battles of another human being. Her heart, cautious and weary, thumped in quiet acknowledgement of the trust she was tentatively extending. Nathan, sensing the weight of the moment, shared another fragment, a childhood memory, rare and unguarded. He spoke of his mother's insistence on perfection, the constant pressure to succeed, and the quiet loneliness that had shaped him into the man he had become. Evelyn listened with an intensity that surprised her. She realized she had never allowed herself to witness anyone with such attentiveness before. By the time the conversation reached its natural pause, a bridge had formed. The barriers they had erected, the resistance, the pride, the fear, were still present, but now thinner, more permeable. They had glimpsed each other's truths and discovered a shared resilience born from hardship. It was a tentative, fragile connection, but one that promised depth beyond superficial attraction. Nathan finally broke the silence, his voice a low murmur that carried both curiosity and care. "I didn't expect this," he said. "I didn't expect to meet someone who understands, who sees without judgment. It's new for me." Evelyn smiled faintly, a small warmth spreading across her face. "It's new for me too. I wasn't sure anyone could see past everything that comes with my life, but somehow you did." Her words hung in the air, charged with honesty and the unspoken fear of opening too much. The night grew late, the diner preparing to close. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening and quiet. They both lingered, reluctant to let the evening end, aware that the stories shared had shifted the dynamics between them. It was no longer a spark. It was a slow, undeniable pull, an emotional tether binding two lives that had been lonely for far too long. As they stepped outside, the cool night air wrapped around them. Nathan handed Evelyn an umbrella for her children, and she accepted with a nod, her fingers brushing against his in a fleeting, charged moment. Neither spoke of the evening's revelations, but both carried them inwardly, knowing that the truths unveiled had irrevocably changed their connection. Have you ever shared a piece of your past with someone and felt a quiet shift, a bridge forming where there was once distance? The morning sun filtered through the apartment blinds, painting golden stripes across Evelyn's kitchen floor. Lila and Jamal were already arguing over who got the first bite of toast, their laughter bouncing off the walls in a chaotic harmony that Evelyn secretly loved. She moved with a practiced grace, pouring juice, spreading peanut butter, and trying to keep her children's energy from toppling into chaos. Yet today, there was a difference. Her mind kept drifting to Nathan. She smiled at a memory from the diner, his subtle attentiveness, the way he had listened without judgment, the small kindnesses that had slipped past the surface of their conversations. Evelyn shook her head slightly, almost embarrassed at how easily her heart clung to that memory. "I can't be this vulnerable. Not yet." But the thought stopped there, unspoken, as Jamal tugged at her sleeve, demanding cereal. Nathan, on the other side of the city, was walking through his office building's quiet hallways, a brief smile playing on his lips for no apparent reason. His assistant raised an eyebrow. "Sir, are you daydreaming again?" "Maybe," he admitted, chuckling softly. He replayed Evelyn's laughter in his mind, the way her eyes had lit up when she talked about her children, the honesty in her voice. He felt a strange warmth, a connection that wasn't forced, wasn't transactional, something entirely new. His walls, built high and unyielding for years, seemed thinner somehow, vulnerable to the pull of her presence in his thoughts. Later that day, a chance encounter brought them together again, this time under less dramatic circumstances. Nathan had arrived at a boutique grocery store to pick up supplies for his apartment when he spotted Evelyn struggling with two overflowing shopping baskets, Jamal perched on the edge of one, Lila tugging at a bag of apples. "Need a hand?" he asked, approaching cautiously. His voice carried warmth and familiarity, yet she stiffened slightly, the old caution tugging at her heart. Sure," she said, offering a tight smile. Together, they carried the baskets to the checkout, the mundane act of collaboration creating a rhythm of shared movement. Their hands brushed occasionally, deliberate yet casual, and with each touch, an unspoken acknowledgement passed between them. This connection wasn't fleeting. Once home, they settled into a quiet afternoon. Evelyn's children played nearby, and Nathan leaned against the kitchen counter, watching her move with ease and authority, a soft admiration in his gaze. "You're good with them," he said softly, almost as an observation, almost as a question. Evelyn paused, looking at him through the corner of her eye. "They're not easy," she replied, a hint of a smile breaking through her usual composure. "But they're worth it." The simplicity of the moment, the quiet honesty, bridged the emotional distance between them. Nathan realized he could laugh around her, not the practiced chuckle of social expectation, but real laughter, genuine and effortless. Evelyn, in turn, felt her guard lowering, feeling seen and understood in a way she hadn't in years. Later, as the afternoon stretched into evening, they shared a quiet dinner at her kitchen table. Conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by humor and small revelations. Nathan admitted to burning a lasagna once in college, prompting Lila to giggle and Jamal to roll on the floor in exaggerated horror. Evelyn laughed openly, the sound pure and unrestrained, and Nathan found himself smiling back with a rare, unguarded warmth. The emotional intimacy deepened further when Nathan helped Jamal tie his shoelaces. The simple act of bending down, guiding a small hand, revealed vulnerability on both sides. Nathan had always been careful to keep emotional distance, but with the children, and with Evelyn observing quietly, he allowed himself to be human, to make mistakes, to learn. Evelyn noticed, and the recognition in her eyes mirrored her own longing for connection. By the end of the day, Nathan and Evelyn found themselves on the small balcony of her apartment, sipping warm tea as the city lights flickered below. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of nearby rain. Silence settled comfortably between them, no longer awkward but charged with unspoken understanding. "You're different," Evelyn said finally, her voice low, almost hesitant. Nathan looked at her, puzzled but intrigued. "How so?" he asked. You make it easy to be yourself. Not perform, not pretend. It's rare." Her words lingered, heavy with sincerity and a quiet invitation. Nathan leaned closer, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I could say the same about you." The moment stretched, delicate and electric. Neither spoke of love, not yet, but the bond forming between them was undeniable. Trust had begun to root itself, fragile but growing. They shared small confessions, laughter, and moments of vulnerability that left them both feeling lighter, seen, and unexpectedly hopeful. Have you ever shared a simple moment with someone that made your heart feel lighter, as if you could finally be yourself? The weekend dawned with a deceptive calm. Nathan had planned to take Evelyn and her children to a small art exhibit he thought they'd enjoy, an effort to blend his world with hers and to continue building the fragile connection that had been growing. He arrived at her apartment early, expecting the warmth of smiles and laughter. But the scene that greeted him sent a cold jolt through his chest. Evelyn's phone sat on the kitchen counter, and an email notification popped up on the screen. A photo preview showed a man, well-dressed, smiling, with Evelyn at some charity event. Nathan froze, heart tightening. There was no caption, no explanation, just the image, a frozen fragment of what he assumed was intimacy beyond his own presence. Evelyn emerged from the bedroom, her hair tied back in a loose braid, a sleepy smile on her lips. "Morning," she said, unaware of the storm that had just gripped Nathan. "Who's he?" Nathan's voice was sharp, brittle, cracking under tension. Evelyn blinked, confusion coloring her expression. "What?" "Nathan, that's my cousin's husband. We attended a charity dinner last month." "Why?" Nathan shook his head, incredulous. I saw the photo. You didn't mention it." "You didn't," his words faltered as frustration and fear collided. He wanted to believe her, but the insecurity he had fought so hard to suppress rose with sudden force. Evelyn took a cautious step closer, her voice calm but firm. "Nathan, it's nothing like that. I've never hidden anything from you. That's just a relative. I would never." But Nathan was already backing away, a reflexive defense mechanism taking over. I can't do this," he muttered, turning abruptly toward the door. His pride, fear, and lingering heartbreak from the past coalesced into an invisible wall, and he stormed out into the street. Evelyn's hands trembled slightly as she watched him go, anger and hurt mixing with confusion. "He doesn't trust me. After everything we've shared, he's letting fear decide for him." She wanted to chase him, to explain, to reach out, but pride and shock held her in place. The day stretched painfully for both of them. Nathan wandered through his penthouse, the city below a blur of lights and noise. Every image of Evelyn, every memory of her laugh, her warmth, and the quiet trust they had begun to share collided with the mistrust he now felt. He replayed the photo over and over in his mind, twisting it into scenarios of betrayal despite knowing, deep down, the truth. Evelyn, meanwhile, tried to maintain composure for her children, but her thoughts were consumed by Nathan's sudden withdrawal. She replayed the morning's conversation repeatedly, the hurt of being misjudged biting deeper than she anticipated. She knew she had been open, had let herself trust, but now she felt the sting of rejection and the fragility of the bond they had just built. By evening, friends tried to console both parties separately. Nathan's confidant, a longtime business partner, offered advice wrapped in pragmatism. "You've got to protect yourself. People will disappoint you. Don't let emotions cloud your judgment." Nathan nodded mechanically, yet the warmth in his chest, the pull he couldn't ignore, fought back, a subtle reminder that this wasn't just another transaction or superficial connection. Evelyn's friend Mariah urged her to reach out. "Nathan's reacting. He doesn't know the truth. You need to tell him before the moment disappears." Evelyn hesitated. She wanted to trust him to come around, but the silence stretched into hours, leaving her anxious and conflicted. Later that night, Nathan sat alone on his balcony, staring at the city lights reflected in the river below. His chest ached, not from betrayal, but from the loss of something he hadn't fully claimed yet. The walls he had spent decades building now felt heavier than ever, the fear of being hurt choking him in subtle waves. Evelyn sat in her living room, Jamal and Lila asleep upstairs. She rubbed the bracelet on her wrist, the same one Nathan had noticed early on. Its charm seemed to glow faintly in the lamplight, a quiet reminder of hope, resilience, and connection. She whispered into the empty room, "I can't let him go. Not like this." Despite their emotional distance, the pull between them remained undeniable. The spark that had once been fragile now burned quietly beneath layers of misunderstanding, pride, and fear. Both were alone, forced to confront their insecurities, and to decide whether this fracture would become a permanent rift or a temporary storm in a bond worth fighting for. In this shatterpoint, the emotional stakes are clear. Nathan's pride and past trauma collide with Evelyn's vulnerability and hope. One impulsive glance at a misleading photo threatens to destroy everything they've begun to build. The tension is raw, and the audience is left on edge, wondering if this connection can survive the test of trust and communication. Have you ever misjudged someone based on incomplete information, and how did it affect your connection with them? The city slept under a thin veil of fog, streetlights casting hazy halos over rain-slicked streets. Nathan's penthouse was silent, but his mind was anything but. He stared at the skyline, the glittering lights a stark contrast to the storm of emotions inside him. The photograph, the misunderstanding, the fragile bond they had begun to forge, it all played over and over, each memory a dagger of regret and longing. He knew he had reacted impulsively, letting pride and fear dictate his actions. Every rational thought told him to maintain distance, to protect himself from potential heartbreak. But deeper, beneath the carefully curated layers of control, something insisted he could not let this go. Evelyn was not just a spark of curiosity, she was a force, unyielding and honest, capable of breaking through walls he had believed unbreakable. Nathan sank into the sofa, gripping his phone. His fingers hovered over the screen, poised to dial. Every hesitation echoed years of learned caution. Trust is a liability, love is a risk, but the voice in his chest would not be silenced. Finally, with a deep exhale, he pressed the call button. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat on her living room sofa, blanket draped loosely over her shoulders. The bracelet on her wrist felt heavier than ever, a talisman of hope and courage. She had thought about Nathan non-stop since the morning's confrontation, oscillating between frustration and longing. Part of her wanted to wait, to let him make the first move, to avoid the pain of rejection once more. Another part, braver, whispered that silence could destroy the bond they had just begun to nurture. Her phone vibrated. She picked it up, expecting another delayed message from a friend. Instead, Nathan's name flashed across the screen. Her breath caught. Fingers trembling slightly, she answered. "Evelyn, can we talk?" His voice, low and earnest, cut through the fog of her fear. "Yes," she said, her voice a whisper, heart hammering. "We need to." They agreed to meet at a quiet park bench near the river, a neutral ground, away from the pressure of apartments, penthouses, and prying eyes. The city seemed to hold its breath as they approached each other from opposite paths, cautious, hesitant, yet unable to resist the gravitational pull between them. Nathan arrived first, hands buried in his coat pockets, jaw tight with tension. He saw her approach, umbrella closed, hair damp from a drizzle that had started again. Evelyn's eyes met his, a mixture of apprehension and quiet determination. Neither spoke immediately. They simply stood there for a heartbeat, two worlds colliding, hearts exposed, vulnerabilities laid bare. I overreacted. Nathan began finally, his voice rough around the edges. I let fear and my own past get in the way. I misjudged you. I'm sorry. The words were sparse but charged with sincerity. Evelyn swallowed, letting the knot of anger and frustration loosen slightly. I understand why you felt that way, she admitted, voice steady. But you have to know, nothing happened. It was just a misunderstanding, a moment taken out of context. I never hid anything from you. Nathan nodded slowly, exhaling a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. I know now. And I don't want to lose this. You, us. Whatever this is, I want to try. Properly. Without walls, without fear. Evelyn's eyes shimmered with tears, not of sadness, but of relief and cautious hope. She took a step closer, bridging the space that fear had created. I don't want to lose this either, she whispered. But we have to be honest. Truly honest. No assumptions, no letting pride get in the way. Nathan extended his hand, a small gesture heavy with promise. Evelyn hesitated for only a moment before placing her hand in his, the warmth of contact sealing the silent agreement between them. In that simple touch, years of fear, heartbreak, and guardedness began to melt away, replaced by trust, hope, and the raw potential of love. They walked slowly along the river, the night quiet except for their footsteps and the occasional ripple of water against the bank. Each word, each glance, each laugh shared carried weight, layering trust and understanding upon the fragile bond that had been tested and nearly broken. Nathan stopped suddenly, turning to face her fully. I don't want to waste any more time pretending I'm untouchable, he said softly. I'm falling for you, Evelyn. And I can't fight it anymore. Evelyn's breath caught, a gentle smile breaking across her face. I'm falling too, she admitted. The words were simple, yet monumental, a surrender to hope and connection after years of resistance and pain. They lingered in the quiet night, hands intertwined, hearts finally unburdened, each aware that the choice to fight for this connection had changed everything. It was not just a choice of the moment, it was a decision to embrace vulnerability, to trust, and to allow love in fully and without apology. Have you ever had to choose between pride and love, and what did you learn about yourself when you chose to be vulnerable? The following week dawned bright and clear, the city streets sparkling under an early morning sun. Nathan had insisted on surprising Evelyn and the children, a small gesture that spoke volumes. He wasn't just present emotionally, he wanted to be present in their everyday lives. He arrived at Evelyn's apartment, arms laden with bags of groceries, a bouquet of fresh flowers, and a small backpack filled with surprises for Jamal and Lila. The elevator doors opened, and he stepped out, nerves hidden beneath his usual composure. Today was about more than groceries or casual visits. It was about presence, consistency, and showing that he wasn't just a fleeting spark in her life. Evelyn opened the door, surprised and delighted. Her children squealed with excitement at the sight of him, rushing forward and enveloping him in a chaotic, joyful hug. Nathan laughed, genuine and unrestrained, as he crouched down to meet their eager embraces. Looks like I've been claimed already, he joked, earning a warm, playful smile from Evelyn. The morning unfolded with ease and laughter. Nathan helped Jamal with a makeshift treasure hunt, hid clues around the living room, and watched with amusement as Lila led the hunt with determination and glee. Evelyn, observing quietly, felt a warmth in her chest she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Nathan was patient, attentive, and entirely present, a partner not only for her but for her children. At one point, Nathan and Evelyn found themselves alone in the kitchen, the bustle of children's laughter fading into the background. He brushed a damp strand of hair from her forehead, a tender gesture that carried more weight than words. "I meant what I said," he murmured, his eyes searching hers. "I don't want to fight against this anymore. I want us. All of it." Evelyn's lips curved into a soft smile, her hands finding his. "I've never had someone truly choose to be part of this. Me, them, everything. But I can feel it now. I feel you choosing." Her voice trembled slightly, unguarded and real. Outside, the city pulsed with life, but inside that small apartment, time seemed to stretch and soften. Nathan and Evelyn moved seamlessly through the day, their gestures, laughter, and small touches echoing the intimacy and understanding that had grown between them over the past week. The walls they had both built, the fear, the pride, the past heartbreak, had been dismantled, brick by trust, honesty, and the small acts of daily life. Later that afternoon, Nathan suggested they take a walk to the park where they had reconciled just days earlier. Hand in hand, with the children skipping ahead, they wandered through the sun-dappled pathways, the air filled with birdsong and the gentle rustle of autumn leaves. Nathan pulled Evelyn gently into his side as they walked, his eyes reflecting a quiet awe at the life they were beginning to create together. At a small wooden bridge overlooking the river, Nathan stopped. He turned to face Evelyn fully, sunlight catching the edges of her hair, illuminating the strength and warmth in her expression. "Do you remember the first time we really connected?" he asked softly, a small smile tugging at his lips. Evelyn nodded, the memory vivid and clear. The parking lot, the rain, everything felt impossible but real. Nathan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small charm, a replica of the bracelet she wore, identical in every detail. "I kept this," he said, "to remind me that sometimes the moments you think are chance aren't. They're meant to change everything." Evelyn's eyes glistened with tears, a mixture of joy, surprise, and deep emotional resonance. She took the charm, pressing it against her wrist next to her own. "It has," she whispered. "You've changed everything, Nathan." In that moment, everything felt aligned. The spark of the first encounter, the vulnerability of their forced proximity, the truths unveiled, the laughter, the misunderstandings, all of it coalesced into a perfect, fragile, and resilient tapestry of love. Nathan leaned in, brushing his lips against hers in a soft, deliberate kiss, sealing a promise of connection, commitment, and emotional safety. The rest of the day flowed in a seamless rhythm of laughter, shared stories, and quiet moments. Nathan played with the children, helped Evelyn in small domestic ways, and for the first time, both felt the true comfort of partnership. No masks, no walls. Just honesty, trust, and the realization that love had arrived, not as a fleeting spark, but as a steady, enduring flame. That evening, as the city lights twinkled and the children slept, Nathan and Evelyn sat on the balcony, a shared blanket draped over their shoulders. Silence fell, not awkward but comforting, filled with the weight of shared history and the promise of a shared future. "You know," Evelyn said softly, leaning into him, "I was scared after everything. I didn't think someone like you could stay, could really see all of this and still want it." Nathan's arm tightened around her. "I don't just want it," he replied, voice gentle. "I choose it. I choose you, them, us, every day if I have to. That's how love works. It's not about perfection. It's about presence, trust, and being willing to show up." Evelyn smiled, a deep, heartfelt smile that spoke of relief, joy, and quiet triumph. "Then I'll choose too," she whispered. And with that, they watched the city stretch into night, hand in hand, hearts aligned. The journey had been messy, emotional, and filled with obstacles, but love had prevailed. Every spark, every misunderstanding, every revelation had led them here, to a place of connection, trust, and unexpected, enduring love. Have you ever taken a leap of faith for love, choosing vulnerability over fear, and how did it change your life? Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.